Welcome to SAM Conversation, a program of South Asia Monitor. Our guest today is Lieutenant Col Gautam Das, whose latest book, Crafting the New Indian Art of War for Future Challenges. It's just been published and released, and this is what I consider a very important book, and one which will be very informative and interesting. Crafting the New Indian Art of War for Future Challenges. Now, I would like to begin by reminding the audience that the Indian Army may have been put together by the British, but in the period between 1758 and 1818, 60 years, they battled the Marathas. And it is from the Marathas that they learnt about guerrilla warfare. The Marathas were specialists in the tactics of hiding, hitting, and withdrawing before the enemy could react. It was this tactic that the British learned from the Indian soldiers, the Marathas. And now let's come to the First World War, 1914 to 1918, the first very highly technological war in which there were high rate of firing weapons at long ranges. There were 1.5 million Indian troops who won the First World War for the Allies. This is no exaggeration. Everything was new to them. The climate, the people, the cultures. They overcame everything and they excelled. And the British had to change their policy of not awarding the Victoria Cross to non-whites, with Khudabad Khan becoming the first recipient of the Victoria Cross. Then came the Second World War. 2.5 million Indian soldiers were the winning factor for the Allies again. Now came independence, the first war, 47-48, in Jammu Kashmir. It is the civilian leadership which didn't allow the war to be completed. Then came 1962. Again, the civilian leadership was very, very, very flawed. And it's great to say that, you fight to the last man, last bullet. But what happened to Major Shaitan Singh and his company should not have happened. You should not have, any army should not have reached a situation where they're short of men and they're short of ammunition, they're short of equipment. And in any case, fighting that war with a rifle which was very old, the 303 Lee Enfield. In 1965, we were at the gates of Lahore. We were stopped again. 1971, the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi listened to the then Chief General, later Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, and the result was a 13-day war and division of Pakistan. East Pakistan became liberated and became born as Bangladesh. along with independence came insurgencies. The Indian soldiers became specialists in counterinsurgency warfare also. And also in 1947-48, the Indian Army redefined mountain warfare by fighting at Hajipir with tanks, taking tanks there, 14,000 feet. What I'm trying to say is that there is probably no better soldier in the world at adapting at and the amount of resilience. So what Col Gautam Sen has to say about the crafting the new Indian art of war for future challenges, without saying anything further, I request Colonel Das to hold on, to please share his the thoughts, share his the ideas of his book, please.
Thank you, Colonel Bhat. Anil, we've known each other a long time, and while you have, in a way, introduced the topic for me, thank you very much indeed, with Shivaji and his Ganimi Kaya, the term used by them and by his professionals, Maratha soldiery, the Bargir, or the mounted soldier, whom you did not mention, by the way. But let me come to this particular book. Those who were fortunate, I was fortunate that they were attending the launch. I told them that this particular book was born out of sorrow and born out of a sense of grievance. I will repeat that for you and your audience, Anil. The sorrow was that on the 15th of November 1962, I came down from boarding school along with a lot of my schoolmates, barring the class 11 lot. I was in class 10, just finished school, just finished that year's exams, and we all came down to Siliguri station from the boarding school in Darjeeling, and the 62 war was still on at the time. And there were casualties coming in from what was called NEFA at the time, Northeast Frontier Agency, now Arunachal Pradesh, and coming to the same platform in Siliguri Junction, no longer used very much now because it is a multi-gauge station. But those were Indian soldiers, walking wounded, stretcher cases, and being an army brat, I was very badly affected. I'd grown up in the cocoon of the army, and it's what made up my mind to take up the profession of arms at that stage, just having finished class 10. But the sorrow comes from there. The grievance comes from the fact that in my service as an infantry officer, very often, while practicing advance to contact as a Vanguard Company Commander and such like, I did, with consideration, realize that perhaps we could have done some of those tactical maneuvers better in our practice phase, and therefore avoided some of the mistakes that we subsequently did, starting from the first time of my second lieutenant service. And sure enough, there were mistakes, some pretty horrendous ones. The one which affected me most at the time in the 71 war was the 14 Grenadiers attack on Beruchian. Now, curiously enough, the Corps Commander is the equivalent Corps Commander of 15 Corps then, which is like today's Northern Command. General Sartaj Singh, Lieutenant General Sartaj Singh, he came to the picket I was commanding, picket 561, in southern J&K, in the Nashara sector, and along with him came our divisional commander, brigade commander, and so on, to discuss a particular approach we were covering. And along with them, they brought Lieutenant Colonel Inderjeet Singh, CO of 14 Grenadiers, who was the reserve battalion commander of the whole division. Very smart, very handsome Sikh, CO of the reserve battalion. I happened to meet him there. But within a year, this battalion was decimated by the attack they were forced to put in. And I felt that there was serious mistakes in the way this was launched and executed. So therefore, in this book, I cover the period starting from August 47 and I take it to the end of my period of grievance that I have used, which is August 2020, the Galwan episode, whereby, depending upon whose calculations you are using, we have lost anywhere between, or lost the rights to patrol, if you want to be so diplomatic, a certain large amount of acreage. So that is my grievance that we are still there from 62 to this place.
Well, sir, thank you very much, and I'm very glad you come to the point of Galwan, because with the Chinese we learned a new kind of war, a war from 1967, where after which they pressed very hard for us not for each other for not firing at each other, because they lost almost 400 in those skirmishes in Nathula and Chola in 1967 September. They lost about 400. We lost 67. And thereafter they pressed very hard that let's not fire at each other. So now began a new kind of warfare where we are doing border management, bulletless border management by mukkebazi, fisticuffs, pushing, pulling, wrestling, and finally even throwing stones at each other, and the medieval barbaric way of iron rods with nails on them, which the Chinese tried, and they killed they killed 20 of us, and what the official reports of how many we killed are about 43, but there are other reports which say we have killed more than 100, and again ironically without arms, without firing back at them, with bare hands. I mean, you are again proving a point here that now this is the kind of adaptability. Now comes now we have this. Now, please, if you can tell us what we require to be considering the fact that we face two foes, two enemies, China and Pakistan. Both are nuclear armed. It's a great scratch each other's back kind of friendship that they have, and I know of a lot of support of the nuclear, building up the nuclear arsenal. Sir,
the agreement between China and Pakistan is what they're calling the Iron Bond or Chieka, so the iron buddies in Mandarin. But to come back to the book and to the things I've put in and to answer the question just posed by Col Anil Bhat, the book covers the period from August 47 to August 2020, which is the Galwan issue. And I have taken examples, both good and bad. One of the first good examples that I have in the book is the one Col Bhat has referred to himself, the tanks at Zojila. There are others, which I'm happy to point out that our commanders at different levels have been able to think of and execute. So it's not that we are not capable of it. We are, and our commanders are capable of coming up with tactical solutions to actual tactical problems on the ground at the spur of the moment. So I emphasize in this book what I feel were our shortcomings over time, the same period that I'm talking about, for which I've given specific examples in detail from published works, including the official histories, is that our policy that we have, our military doctrinal policy, which by the way is not something that is not unpublished like the national security strategy. This military, the Indian Army's doctrine is a published document available on the net to anyone. But it needs to be more aggressive. This is my first point. our tactical doctrine and the doctrine for the level above it, that of operational art, needs to be inherently more aggressive than what
No
we are
doubt,
following
no
now.
doubt, sir. No doubt.
Therefore, what we need to have, number one, is a aggressive defensive policy. I'm not advocating an offensive policy such as the American policy for the world, the military policy for the world. They're, they're clearly in a completely different mindset of, putting in assaults, attacks, capturing territory anywhere in the world. I'm not talking of that. All I'm saying is that where we are pressed by two political armies whom we are facing, the Pakistanis, because the Pakistan army also tries to handle the politics of Pakistan. It has been very famously described as every country has an army, every nation has an army. Pakistan is the only
Pakistan has
country
has the country.
where the army has a
The
country.
army has the country.
Yes. on the on the other side is China. Now, China's is avowedly a political army. That is part of their actual official status. It is not the Chinese army that you face or that we face. It is the army of the Communist Party of China.
Party of China. Absolutely.
It
Absolutely.
is it is reiterated at their army day parades by no less than the president of the country, who's also the head of the army and head of the government. And he says that your duty lies to the Chinese Communist Party and not to the Chinese government. So therefore, they are prepared to act against any government of China, irrespective of the fact that it is set up by the party. If required, they will act against the people of China. It will act against the government of China in the interests of the party. And they cite the collapse of the Soviet Union to say that we will never nationalize the army. They say so. He says so every year. We will never nationalize the army. Russia made the Soviet Union first made the mistake of nationalizing their armies into a Russian army or this army or that army. The mere fact that they nationalized the army, according to the Chinese, is the reason of the downfall. So they're very clear they're never going to nationalize the People's Liberation Army. It is the army of the party. So we have two political armies against us who are apolitical and are also run on a basis of strategic expediency, military, political, as well as military expediency by the government of the day, irrespective of the time. I mean, we have one government till tomorrow, and under the party which has been in power since 2014, and we've had a party which has been in power for much before that. But there's a policy of appeasement or semi-appeasement against the Chinese. This causes problems in the sense that these two political armies are aware that we are very wary or hesitant to actually use force, in addition to the fact that we have actually signed these agreements with China, which they break at will, and we are left holding the thing trying to appease them. So this is one factor and the major factor. Thereafter, I have gone on to talk of in the book, after examining the practices, that therefore we need what I call the 10 commandments. I will not bore you with detail, but they're all based on, apart from the defensive, the purely defensive when needed, fixed defenses wherever, plains, mountains, wherever needed, where there is a threat to that area, it has to be defended, and therefore the army will do it. We are meant for this. When I say we, it's been almost 33 years since I left the army, but nevertheless, I still say we for the army. The issue here is that what I believe is that our defensive policies should be such that if we are very closely threatened, we should strike back, we should counter-attack, right? We should counter both. The Chinese after 1962 have been describing their assault, their offensive on us as counter-attack in self-defense. And this is before we did any such thing other than occupying the Thagla Ridge. That was for them, that was the attack, and that
No,
was
sir.
the whole. I will end here and hand you back to Colonel Bhatt. So the point here is that we need a more aggressive offensive strategy even as part of our defensive posture. To do to tell you any more would be tedious. I would have to name the Ten Commandments. I don't think it's worth
No, no, sir.
taking our
Absolutely.
time.
You have hit the nail on the head with how in your stressing on this point again, the assertiveness of the the government, the in policy, and not have statements being repeated that no, China has not taken an inch of our territory. What's that effect? Right from 2020, they've not budged from whatever they took. And now, finally, what more we have to be very focused on is the cyber warfare, espionage, psychological warfare, covert operations, artificial intelligence, and propaganda. These are what we must use in very good measure against China, because China is going to be fighting us in every other way except bullets, which they are very shy of. Sir, your book I recommend, should be read very widely. And thank you very much for bringing out these points. Maybe we'll be able to meet again for once I had the pleasure of reviewing the book. Thank you very much, sir. All the best.
Thank you very much, Colonel Bhatt. It's been an honor and a pleasure to speak to you and to your viewers on South Asia Monitor, SAM, what is it you call it, the SAM discussions. Right. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.